All right, we are live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Office Hours with your weekly social media updates and all of that. I am joined by the lovely Alexis today.
Hi guys. Hello, hello. I'm so excited to be here. This is my first one. So I'm very excited. I'm so glad that I got to pop in today.
Yes, thanks for joining us. It's always great to have you. So, for Alexis and for anyone joining us who's never been here before, what we do is I normally go over a few social media updates that I've heard of this week just to keep you guys informed and aware of any changes. And then anything that Alexis has on her mind, we'll bring up and talk about. And of course, throughout this live, if you have any questions about social media, if anything we talk about jogs some questions, feel free to drop those in a comment on the stream and then we will answer them directly for you. So, ready to go. Okay, so this week, some of the updates I was noticing, a lot of people are putting out studies, and we're getting into the end of year wrap up as we're starting to look back at any social media trends for the year and kind of gearing up to start thinking what's going on next year, where are people headed? So a couple interesting things that I noted this week are that the typical internet user spends almost 2.5 hours on social media. So that may not be surprising to some people, but that number just always blows my mind. I'm like, we only have what 24 hours in a day. We sleep for hopefully 10 of them. Another 2 hours. We work for 8 of them. It's a lot of time.
It's a lot.
So with content and social media and getting in front of your audience, that's just why we're always drilling down. If you're not posting on social media, you're essentially kind of invisible to a lot of your audience because they're not spending as much time watching TV and driving and looking at out of home ads and billboards. So wherever your former advertising channels used to be, social media is the easiest, most cost effective, and you're guaranteed an audience because there's people on there for 2 hours every single day.
Yeah, I mean, I think about when I'm sitting down at night, even with the TV on, like if there's a football game on, I'm still scrolling on my phone. I
Mhm.
still doom scrolling on my phone. So that is, I'm sure mine's probably more than most at that point. So I would be
Maybe,
terrified.
but maybe not. In that study, they also talked about that as well. They were saying that dual screens, there's a study done about dual screens because I think they're starting to recognize a pattern of you'll have TV on, but you're still on your phone. And they were saying that mobile screens and mobile is actually more, you're more locked into it
Right.
than a big screen like a TV,
Yeah.
which I completely, yeah, like my roommate and I do that all the time. We put something on the TV, I'm still scrolling on my phone.
Think about your kid. They tell you, the smaller the screen, the more locked in they are. I mean, it's the same way for adults. We're just, big kids. So I'm
Mhm.
on my phone. It's a problem. I should probably put it down a little bit more for sure.
I'm sure we all could, but that's why I think it's so important to be on social media and to be consistent. And we talk about that a lot for people, right? Is being consistent, but it's because if people are spending 2 hours a day on social media scrolling and you're only posting once a month, think about all the other content they're seeing in between that. And for your competitors who are posting once a week and staying top of mind, they're just capturing interest and attention in business that could be yours and could be yours more easily, especially if it's former clients, people looking to refinance. So just staying top of mind and staying active on social media to me is half the battle.
Yeah, I mean, I think you just hit on one of the biggest pieces that a lot of people who are branching into social media for marketing are missing sometimes. Is that you're not necessarily posting to get a lead that day. You
Mhm.
are posting to stay top of mind so that when your neighbor down the street needs to refinance their home or your cousin who has no idea what you do, reaches out and they're like, "Hey, you're in the mortgage industry. Like, tell me how I can help here. Like, what can I do?"
Mhm.
I think that is one of the biggest pieces that a lot of these financial and real estate professionals need to realize.
I agree, and I think some of that too is it makes you feel more accessible. Like, if you're not posting a lot, right, and when you do post, it's very personal to your page or something, I feel like what happens is people go, "Oh, they're really busy. I don't know if they want my business. I don't know if they I don't wanna bother them. Like, this is a personal relationship. I don't wanna ruin that."
Yeah.
Which I'm sure every LO is like, "No,
Oh,
no, give
absolutely
me
not.
come talk to me." But it's like, well, if you're posting and if you're always posting market updates or, hey, ask me questions if you have questions about rates right now or refinancing or whatever, it opens that door to make people feel like, oh, I can go ask them this question, or I could send them a random DM even if I haven't talked to them in a year. But I could follow up and say, hey, like rates seem I've heard things about rates dropping. My current rate's this. should I be doing anything or am I good?
Yeah.
And just being the touch point for that is going to be how you turn those into conversions, right? And it's not all going to be, oh, every video I have 3 leads reaching out and rolling in. But what we hear people say is they're like, oh, I had nothing, nothing, nothing. And then all of a sudden, waves of people
Yeah.
are coming in and talking to me.
Absolutely.
And it's because it's like, well, once they've warmed up to you, once they've seen enough of your content, once they trust you, that's when they're going to come reach out and say, oh, hey, yeah, I've seen like 8 of your videos and I've been meaning to talk to you, but this one finally gave me the push to message you.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, when I was in the origination space, whenever I had somebody reach out and they're like, hey, typically because of my age, it was typically first time home buyers. And they were saying, what do I do? What are my first steps? Even if I wasn't the person that originated their loan because of either I wasn't originating at that time or there was a better offer somewhere else, which if you were my friend, I would have pushed you to that. If there was somewhere else I could save you money, they still, because I posted about it, even as seldom as I did, they still felt that they could reach out and ask those hard questions that they normally may not be able to with a loan officer that they had just met on, through, submitting their application at their local.
mhm.
So I think that's a really, really big piece of making yourself seem relatable, showing your authentic personality. It's going to have those, not immediately, but it's going to have those people coming to you because you are top of mind.
Exactly. And I think too, when you approach it from like, I am a resource and I'm here to be a resource, not, hey, let's jump on a call and do a consult. Like I think sometimes the language people use unintentionally, like they're trying to say, let's just chat about your situation, which is a great thing to be saying. But when it comes off as, oh, I'm trying to get you into a consult to get you to buy something that maybe you don't want. Whereas just like what you said, it's if there's a better deal, I'm going to push you towards that deal because I want what's best for you. So when you are on social media consistently enough that you're just like, I'm just here to give you advice and give you information. And if you need someone to look over something for you, even if you don't use me, that's fine. But I want to be that person who helps you. And to me, that increases your trustworthiness, right? Immediately, I'm like, oh, okay, if you're not just trying to sell me on something, great.
Oh,
But also, if I was ever to refer somebody, even if I didn't go with you because there was a better offer somewhere else,
right.
I'd probably still say, hey, go talk to Alexis because she was honest with me. And if you find a better deal, she'll still tell you to take it, but she'll also make sure you feel good about what you're doing
Yeah.
in case that other person is being more salesy and you're like, I'm not really sure if they're trying to close me or if they're actually being honest with me.
Yeah, no, and I know one of the biggest things I did was just look at their documents or talk to them about the definition of what, a specific thing means. Like what are points? What are discount points? What is APR? Those are things that, we talk about every day because we're in the mortgage industry, but for your average home buyer, that's something that they're going to hear, once, twice, 5 times in their life. And that's not something that's going to be top of mind for them every day to sit down and figure out what that is. So,
Absolutely. And I would say too, that's why we always talk about like it's okay to repeat yourself in your content, in your videos. Like I always tell people to do series, like content series of things, and defining terms can be a great one to start with, especially as you get comfortable on camera. It
yeah,
feels really basic. But what I always like to do too is I'm like, make it as relatable as possible. So if you have a client story or if you can say, oh, I had someone come in and ask me about this today, they were a first time buyer, let's clarify what APR is and why this matters for you. Because
yeah,
I think when you can contextualize it of, oh, it's not just you and I'm not approaching this like a dictionary, right? Like APR,
right,
that stands for this and this is what it does.
right,
If you're making it interesting to say, okay, I get this question all the time, in case you need the answer, here's this, and then in my next video let's go over the next term, which could be, like let's talk about a rate buy down and what that is in my
right.
next video. That
Yes,
can really give people a not only okay a quick snippet, but b if they're like, oh well, I'm going to scroll because I already know what APR is, but then you're like, in my next video I'll talk about this, then they might go, oh well, wait, I don't know about that, let me go to your next video. So that series kind of also helps tie people in a way that keeps them coming back.
I love that. I love that.
It's great. It's something that I think it's interesting because you are in the mortgage space and
Right.
I've worked in the mortgage space, but I haven't ever been an originator. So I kind of use myself as a litmus test sometimes of, on the younger side, pretty educated about these things, but there are still things that come up that I don't know, or I have to hesitate and be like, wait, I've heard of that, but what is that again? And I always am like, okay, if I'm hesitating, there are people who have no clue what this even is.
Listen, I was a trainer for several years, and the minute you get something down and you learn something about the mortgage industry, it will change. The only thing that is the normal thing in the mortgage industry is that they're always going to be change. So the minute you figure it out, just buckle up. It'll be different next week.
Yep. And honestly, same with social media, right? It's all
Oh,
changing, all evolving, which is why we're here, right? To make it easier, to make it so that you can handle the mortgage stuff and we will handle the social media stuff. So you don't have to do your research. You just have to come ask us and we'll help you out.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Love that. Okay. Well, my last talking point that I can get into is talking about predictions for 2025. And for a lot of it, it was a lot of just AI based. We're bringing in more AI, different image generators and content things. And I find that interesting, but I don't know that that's something that our audience needs to be worried about right now. Right. So the one thing that did catch my attention, however, was that for LinkedIn especially, they are predicting that video consumption and video features are going to continue to be pushed because most of us know that LinkedIn pushed out a video only feed in the last few months. And so if you're on your LinkedIn app on mobile, you'll see it looks kind of like TikTok or Instagram where you can scroll through videos. Well, they're seeing that video posts are actually generating 40% more engagement on average compared to just plain text posts. So because of that, people are predicting that LinkedIn's going to put a lot more focus on video. But the interesting part is they're seeing a discrepancy. So not in the numbers necessarily, but what they're realizing is places like TikTok and Instagram are very entertainment focused, right?
Right.
So you do have your educational videos and you do have your promotional salesy stuff, but you also have a lot of just funny, relatable, day in the life, get to know me, all of this. And
Right.
so if you're posting this entertaining content on LinkedIn, that's not what it's for. So for
Right.
LinkedIn, they're noticing that the professional videos people are posting just aren't as interesting as the entertaining content that you're seeing on Instagram and TikTok. And so what people are thinking is LinkedIn might actually become more of a hub for live videos, just like this one, right? Where we're on here, we're having a discussion or a webinar or something where you're creating more of a conversation around a professional topic. So I wanted to get your thoughts on this, Alexis, because my thought immediately was, okay, if lives are doing well and LinkedIn is pushing video and you need it to be more of a discussion based, I was thinking for loan officers, that is the perfect way to have conversations with your referral partners, right? So
Right.
instead of trying to market to clients on LinkedIn, I was thinking, what if you went live and talked to your agents and were like, hey, if you have questions about the programs I offer, let's talk about it. Let's jump on my live or drop your questions and I'll go over my programs and what I can do for your buyers so that you know how and when to work with me, right? When you should refer people to me because I have these things that other people can't compete with. Do you think that's a good idea? Because you're the professional here.
Professional, loose word. Yeah, that's a really great way to market yourself to your referral partners. One thing that I tell a lot of our users who are, getting the ball rolling and they start mentioning their referral partners is that most of their referral partners are not either on social media or use it for marketing as much as they probably want to. So in a lot of these loan officers' minds, they are saying, hey, I need to be the person that they go to when they have a social media question or they want to, do something different on social media, or they're just wanting to sit down and grab a cup of coffee and say, how are you doing what you're doing? Because I know you're closing loans, but you're also editing videos. What is happening? How did you get there? So that, is a really great way to market yourself and include your referral partners. Becoming the person that not only, because here's the thing, everybody can promise a low rate. Everybody has got great customer service if they want to. What makes you stand out and different to your referral partners that will keep them saying, you know what, I do need to reach out to, so and so because they're doing X. That is a really, really great way to make yourself stand apart. Not only are you staying top of mind for not only your buyers, but your referral partners, but you're also a source of tons of information. And you're able to say, hey, you know what? Let's do a video together, or let's hop on a live and discuss some of the things that you're seeing in trends for home buyers. One thing that I've noticed recently on LinkedIn is I've seen more videos that were I've seen more videos on LinkedIn is
Mhm.
A. B, I've seen a lot of videos who someone has screen recorded their computer and they are talking about C-SPAN or the market. And that is generating a lot of conversation that normally, a market update, you're not going to see as much for a lot of these users. But just by simply recording that and starting a conversation has pushed a lot of those, industry leaders or even your loan officer down the street. It's giving them a little bit extra to talk about, not just while rates are down.
I agree with that. I think too, people undervalue the visual aid aspect of
Oh,
like
for
putting a
sure.
chart up behind you, even if you
Yeah.
don't even technically refer to the chart, but like all those realtor.com articles where they have like the top 10 cities for, new construction homes. That's one of the scripts I was writing this week. It's like you could just put the list behind you and speak to it. And then at the very end, you could be like, oh, and by the way, if you wanted to check out the list, here it is, or comment and I'll tell you what the list says. That's perfect because it's making people try to read what's behind you while you're giving the information. And it makes you seem more credible to be like, oh, I'm talking about this thing behind me.
Absolutely. Not only have I, because I am a chronic reading, I will glance at the post and then read the comments. I am that person. I will always be that person. But I am finding myself going back up to the post after reading a few of the comments so that I can, grasp the post itself before I go in and try to figure out exactly where in the conversation this comment is referring to. So
Mhm.
it's keeping me on that post longer. And it's also, sparking some conversation that normally we wouldn't have in this space, which I
Mhm.
think is a really, really great way to make you as a loan officer seem like, the market expert. And, not all of us can be. We can guess what's going to happen, but that's just, if you're a loan officer, you can guess and you can think about what's going to happen, but we don't know. We have no idea.
Right.
We're hoping for the
And
best.
honestly, you don't have to guess. I think you don't always have to guess what's happening and be right. You can just report on what you're seeing and historically what we've seen. And I think that still proves your expertise and still shows people, oh, you know what you're talking about and you're providing me with this update without having to say, well, I think that rates are going to do this. And then the embarrassment of kind of like, okay, that's not what happened. All you
My
have to do is say, hey, not sure. This could happen. This could happen. I'm not going to predict anything, but historically, here's what we're looking at, and here's what you should be doing right now. And I think that's always a safe place to live.
my
Oh,
Oh, go
sorry.
ahead.
I was going to
I
say, we have a question.
Go ahead,
Did I
ask.
answer that, or do you have one more on this topic before we
No,
start?
I was just gonna say I love these cyclical conversations that spark up on social media about the real estate industry. I think they're always they're a lot of fun. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I think it's great. And I always remind people, I'm like, social media is for everyone, not just marketing to your clients.
Yep.
So engagement is engagement. So if you're speaking to your referral partners, if you're speaking to your peers, if you're saying, hey, what are you guys seeing in the market? What are you hearing most from your clients right now? That can still help your engagement and help your videos perform well. So don't always forget that like you're not just speaking to your clients all the time.
Yeah,
You can speak, it's a conversation with everyone.
yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
so Reem is here. Hello, Reem. And she's asked, do you recommend doing a live and an open house? I have thoughts on this. Do you have thoughts?
I think some of that I know some of this can get into, and a lot of banks specifically have some issues with posting about any open house just for compliance reasons. I think that is something that would probably be very unique to your brand. I think if that's something that you built into, it could definitely be something. But Ashley, what are your thoughts? That's my thought from a compliance perspective because
That's exactly what I was saying. Someone you would know more. I know compliance basics, but you would know more about that. Okay, so if assuming compliance doesn't have a problem with it and you can do it, I think and live streaming in an open house could have its benefits. I think if you have a clear purpose of why you're doing it, and maybe you're promoting the agent and you're saying, "Hey guys, come drop by. Let me do a quick walkthrough of the house. This is great." My one thing is kind of, I feel like if you're there with a lot of people, like if no one's there, please go for it. Answer questions, be on live. But I wouldn't ignore people who are there. I know it's not always the loan officer's role, right, to be speaking to them. That's kind of more on the agent side. But I would be there to support the agent. So if the agent's on board and it's kind of quieter and you're wanting to show off the house and walk around and just say, hey, this is fun, come on by, let's get some foot traffic, let's get some eyes on this. What questions do you have about the house and I'll go ask the agent and get them to answer for you. Like that is totally fine and I think could be good. But I wouldn't do it in a way that's going to make other people who are at the open house be like, oh, I don't want to be on a live stream, or oh, I don't know what's happening here. And it can be a little bit disruptive. So I would say, like, if you wanted to do content around a listing or open houses, I would try to work with the agent. And it doesn't always have to be something on your channel. I know a lot of the times the agents will kind of be like, oh, if you post for me, it's a new audience, which I understand the draw there. But I think sometimes just contributing, like, hey, I'll be in a video with you, or hey, let's, if I have SocialCoach, I'll use one of my video credits to get this all edited. So let's film it and edit it. I'll give it to you. You could tag me, add me as a collaborator, however you want to do this. We can do like a joint thing. But I think it's really, like you said, kind of up to the person, and it's about what is the value you're bringing.
Yeah.
Because if you're not really thinking about the goal of it, I think that's where you kind of could start doing it, and then you're not really sure how to wrap it up, and then maybe you do it once or twice, and then other agents are like, why didn't you do that for me? So I would just think about, if that's something you want to do, why are you doing it? Is there like a quick structure? Like, are you jumping on for 15 minutes, doing a quick house tour, answering questions and jumping off? Or are you keeping it on for 2 hours and putting your phone in a corner and just like acting like you're in an open house? Like that's just where I would anticipate. So hopefully that answers your question, Reem. If you have follow-ups, just let us know there. But it's a great question, because I think everyone's always looking for creative ways to market and to find interesting things to put on their social media. So that could be a great one. Like, using live streams in creative ways, I think can be really interesting, especially if you are staying in front of the camera and like addressing people on the live stream. I think that is more effective than setting it up in a corner and just letting people kind of pop in and out. It's like, I don't know.
There is a reason there's an entire section for Instagram and TikTok for lives. Like, I sometimes accidentally swipe over to the lives. I'm like, oh gosh, they're live. Oh goodness. And then I'm sucked in. I'm like, oh.
Right. Then suddenly they say something, you're like, oh wait, I wanna hear the answer to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is why, if you're just sitting, if you're sitting in an open house and no one's coming through, and you or the agent are kind of staring at each other like, that's a great time to go live and say, well, we're here at this open house. What questions do you have? Do you want to see the house? Here, like, let's take you on a little walking tour. That's all great.
Yeah.
Reem says, I was going to talk about a specific program when it's just me and the partner alone. That's perfect.
Perfect.
I think that's great, because that's showing like, hey, we're here. If you have anything that you want to know about the open house, great. While we're waiting, let me tell you about this program that works for this specific type of listing or this specific type of house. Let's talk about, if you were to buy this house, or what we could do for you.
Yeah.
I think that not only brings in the visual aspect of, oh, you're currently there and this is casual and, authentic, but it also kind of shows it's bringing in that experience, like not the client story necessarily, but it's like, hey, if you imagine yourself buying this exact house, which we're sitting in right now, here's how this would play out. And I think sometimes giving people those concrete examples can be a lot more effective than, I mean, I love it, but like throwing out like FHA loan versus like rate buy down versus seller concession, like they're big words. And I think people get really overwhelmed. They go, oh, I don't know what any of this is. I don't even have an understanding really of, I know I apply for a mortgage and maybe I get pre-qualified or pre-approved at some point, and then I just want to buy the house. I don't know what comes in the middle. And I know we spend hours making content explaining all of this, but how much of that is really laid out in a way that's easy to understand? So what I would do is, like you said, like lay out the program and say, hey, if you're buying this house and this is the numbers that we're looking at and this is the program I'm looking at, here's the example of what you would pay. And if this doesn't work for you, there's a million other options. Come talk to me. Let's break it down. But I think getting those tangible examples is a really good way to illustrate to people how these work, instead of just throwing out acronyms and terms that conceptually they start to understand, but then I think they just lose the greater context.
In the mortgage industry, we live in acronyms. When I was a part of a training program, we had a dictionary basically at the back of our book that we gave new hires that they could refer back to for those. But I think
Mhm.
you hit on something really, really cool that I don't think that I've seen yet. So for anybody that's here, I think for a live, if you're talking about a specific property itself, I think that may bring in an extra layer of experience for those properties that only qualify because of the neighborhood they're in, like DPA programs that are specifically qualified because this area meets a specific guideline for the GSEs. I think that that is a great way to pull in some of that knowledge and experience while also showing that home buyers, it's not just conventional FHA VA. There are things that you can layer on top of conventional loans that make them more achievable for you as a home buyer. So I think that's a really great way to start those discussions and making some of those programs really well known and talked about. Because I feel it feels almost like a hidden perk for when I told somebody, I was like, well, you actually can qualify for, some DPA because of where your property is located. They're like, what? I'm like, oh yeah, absolutely. Here we go. Let's talk about it. So I think that really would be a really great way to incorporate some of that experience as well.
I totally agree. And for Reem also had a follow-up question of like post, should I post about this or should I go live and talk about this? My answer would be if you can, do both.
Yeah,
It's up to you and your comfort level. I know some people find lives a little bit easier sometimes because they're like, oh, then I don't have to worry about it being recorded and editing it and doing that. So maybe you start with a live. If you're there with an agent, I would have both of your phones set up, have one on live and one recording. And then
right.
to me, the best thing to do is go through after and just say, oh, well, were there any points in that conversation that I really felt like we hit on something good? Kind of like you and me, Alexis, we're talking right now. And I'm like, oh, I wish I could clip a few of these.
Right.
Well, if you had it recorded on a different phone, then you could take that, you could clip that out. And sometimes what I learn, the one thing I'll say is when you're talking on a live, you usually refer back to things that you've talked about soon, right? Like it's a conversation and conversations circle back and they refer to things that in the 30-second clip, you might be missing some of the context. So what I would actually do is look back at the live, see if you have a stellar clip, great. But if you don't, if you're like, okay, we kind of hemmed and hawed and this isn't as impactful as I want, but I really liked what we said, then you can just refilm that clip after at the end of the open house or just you later saying, hey, we were at an open house and I was talking with the agent and this is what we were saying. And I just wanted to reiterate this point. Turn that into a video reel and post it. And then that's multiple pieces of content. And I always emphasize it takes people like 7 times of seeing something to absorb information and fully process it. So don't be afraid. Like I wouldn't spam the exact same message like 5 times every single day in a week. I'd spread it out. But if, you're circling back to these basics and to these points, and if you're constantly saying like, by the way, I just want to emphasize I'm a resource, or by the way, I just want to emphasize like rates aren't everything. Those are the points you can keep circling back to and just say it in slightly different ways. And eventually the message will get through.
Yeah, everybody has different learning. They learn things differently, and it's the same way with obtaining information. I need it. I do not handle it well when it's just written down. I need to like verbally say it sometimes if I'm like really trying to work through a tough subject. So I think that's a really great way of just taking what you said and finding a different way to say it or finding a different inflection or a different high point of that same conversation that you've had. Because that is a great way to make content based off of the smallest little thing. And sometimes the smallest things become your biggest and most viral videos. So,
Yeah, because I think sometimes those are the moments that you don't think to film or you don't think to put on video or on social media, but that's what we talk about in adding the personal touch and adding the pieces that maybe seem obvious to you, or maybe you're like, I don't know if that'd be interesting to anyone. And then you post about it and someone's like, wait, what is that? And you're like, oh,
right.
of course, the one thing I thought wouldn't be big goes big. And you're like, okay, well, we're here and we're going to roll with it.
Yeah.
Um, so that's how that works. Well, glad we could answer that question for you, Reem. Thanks for tuning in. Alexis, is there anything else? We're almost at time. So is there anything else you want to talk about while you're here? You're always welcome back. I'm sure Brandon and I would love to have you, but just
Well,
before.
I'll tell you, I was having a conversation yesterday, and this is, I'm kind of playing off of, finding the one piece of information and making it into a video. So this is one small topic that I think I was having a conversation with an admin who is, since I run customer successor at SocialCoach, I talked to a lot of the administrators. And I was having a conversation, and they were talking about highlighting this one specific loan officer because not because they were, the highest producer, or they were, right down the street. It was because they were doing something specific um, that was really, really cool and kind of implemented or showed what their goal as a company was, which I think was really cool. It was, you see all the time the loan officer who has something else that they do that they throw in the content. That's some of the best creators, because it's not just about mortgages. No one wants to talk about mortgages all the time. I grew up in my mother's in the mortgage industry too, and my dad would always say, "I cannot hear the word mortgage again." So it's kind of with your contents the same way. Nobody wants to just hear mortgage. We want to hear something personal. So for a lot of our admins, finding those specific people and finding the thing that makes them a little bit different than the person next to them, that's a really, really great way as an admin to kind of tap into those people and show your brand and show who you are as a company, maybe through those individuals that make your company. That was just a really, really, and I've thought about it before, but it never really hit home, I think, as it did in that conversation. So what are your thoughts on that? Anything? I know that we deal with our administrators all the time and marketing teams. What are your thoughts?
I think my brain took that a slightly different direction, actually. And my thought was that I think we tell people to niche down. And I think that sounds like a scary thing to people, because they're like, well, I do a bunch of different things. So like, I don't want to limit myself to one thing.
Right.
But I think what I always tell people with social media is I'm like, it's not about limiting yourself. It's about being the go-to person for something. And if you're not going to be the go-to for everything, and you can't be. And if you try to be everything, people aren't always going to know when to come to you. They're going to say, oh, well, like, okay, Alexis does loans, but like, I don't know what type of loan. And she may not even be accepting clients. I don't know. Like, again, people will talk themselves out of things. But if you're like, I am the person for rate buy downs, like I know how to do rate buy downs so well. And of course I do FHA and I do all these other things. But like, if you want to know about rate buy downs, like come talk to me. That's going to give anyone who has questions about that to say, oh, okay, you over this other person who talks about VA loans, or you over this other person who says this, or even if you're just like, I am the best person in this area. Like I love serving. I live in Southern California. I am the Orange County loan officer. Come talk to me because I know these properties. I know these people. I know how to deal with historic properties and all the things you deal with in this area. Come talk to me.
Yeah.
So I think, like you're saying, with the find your strengths and speak and like pull people up who aren't just like, oh, I'm a top performer. Oh, I'm just really good at video. It's like, oh, I'm really good at this thing. So this is why you should come to me. You can still be a resource for everything else under the sun. But if you give people a reason to come talk to you, if you say like, here are the top 1, 2, 3 things I'm really good at and I love doing, come talk to me if you want to know more about these. That gives people more of a reason rather than just, oh, I need some generic mortgage help, but I don't know.
Right.
If you're like, oh, okay, I know I'm not a VA person, so I'm not going to go to that, but I do want to know about all these seller concessions that I keep hearing people talk about. And I want to know how that works. So if you're telling me you're the go-to person to ask about that, I'm going to drop into your DMs and ask you about that.
Yeah.
And then that'll probably lead into something more, right?
Yeah, no, that's a really, really great way of taking it too. Because as a loan officer, I knew the people who are really good at specific products that were, niche. And every single time I had one, I would have to pick up the phone and say, "Hey, can you remind me how to even set up this in Compass? Because I know that we have to click a box here, and I can't remember which box or where it is." Cannot tell you how many times I've had that conversation.
Totally. And I think too, with what you like doing best, I think people get afraid to be like, oh, I don't want to say like, oh, these are my favorite types of loans to do, because then other people will think I don't like doing their loans. And I'm like, not exactly. We all have a favorite thing. We all have a favorite part of our job. Like if we could all do this one thing all day, every day, we would love that. So why not speak to that ideal client and say, hey, of course I can do anything, but these are my favorites. So if you want to come talk to me about this specific program, let's do it. And I think that just opens the door to show people, oh, you want more of this. And if I fall into that category, it's a natural slot in. It's a natural way for me to reach out to you and start making things happen, because you're saying that this is good for you and you want this and it's exciting. So if I can help make you excited and I need something from you anyway, it kind of creates this symbiotic relationship where it feels like a good thing instead of
Yeah.
Yeah, instead of a bother, like, "Hi, I'm so sorry to ask you about rates. You probably get this question every single week, but, like, what's happening?" Because that's the other thing I've noticed about social media is I think people start to feel like it's not impolite, but, like, people get nervous to reach out, right? It feels like putting yourself out there. It feels vulnerable to be like, "Oh, if I cold DM someone," especially, like, not as a business person, if you're not on social media, if you're just someone who posts their personal photos of their family, and then you're suddenly cold DMing someone, it feels, like, intrusive. You're like, "I don't know if they want this."
It's like cold calling. It's scary
Yeah.
too. Absolutely.
Right. So if you are someone who's on video constantly and asking for things and saying, "Hey, please send me a message whenever you have a question," or "Hey, I want to hear your questions about this thing," or "I'm looking for new clients, please." I noticed a loan officer who did that. She does that all the time. She's like, "I'm open for new clients," and in my head, I was like, "Aren't loan officers always open for new clients? Like, is there ever a time you're not open to new clients?" But what I realized is I'm like, it's a psychology thing. Is she's advertising, "Hey, I'm open and I want your business. So I'm open to having new clients. If you have questions, let's talk." And I think what that does is it creates this sense of like, this is a good time to approach me. I'm
Yeah.
not going to see your DMs or your questions as annoying or taking away from my professional workday, which I think loan officers don't. I think everyone would be excited to get a DM.
Oh, absolutely.
If you're not making that clear to your audience, they might be under this impression of like, "Oh, well, like, Alexis is just so busy. I don't wanna bother her. Even if I have a question and this is what she does, I just don't wanna bother."
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll ask my realtor who they suggest. Even though I know that so and so down the street that I've known for 20 years does mortgages. Yeah.
Right, but, like, what if you're busy? What if and
Yeah.
especially with that personal relationship, you're and
Yes.
especially, like, maybe financed with this person 10 years ago, and you're like, "Well, I don't know. I don't even know anymore." Whereas if you're doing videos every day and they're on social media and you see them and they're still talking about things, you're more likely to just be like, "Hey, I saw your video. Great job. Question for you."
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, again, staying top of mind is it's the best way to promote yourself. Just make sure you're posting consistently. It's
Right.
hard. That's easier said than done, but
It
it's
is.
the most important things.
But I think that too is why we always encourage, like, it doesn't have to be this super polished, super educational video. It doesn't always have to be, you know, like a whole production that you're like, "Oh, I have to have planned all this out." It can just be, "Hey, I'm out on the golf course," or "I'm, going to brunch with my family, but like this question came up. My niece called me 2 weeks ago asking about this." Um, it all leads to like, oh, I'm sorry. Reem is saying we can't hear you anymore.
Oh no.
I know. I'm like, "What happened? We didn't touch anything." Um,
Okay
I'm
then.
gonna hope it comes back, but I'm sorry to hear that, Reem. I'm gonna wave. I'll add a comment. Sorry to hear like, that's strange.
It's very strange.
Not sure what happened, but I guess that could be our signal,
It's
that
time.
that's about time, but
Time to
I love this.
Yeah.
We love to have you back because you always just have we get into these conversations, and I think it's so valuable, and thank you to everyone who is tuning in and listening to this because, that's just so nice to be able to have questions and help answer them for you, and it inspires such great discussions that I think this is always just so valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you guys for having me. Super excited. I'll be back, sometime soon.
Absolutely, anytime. We'd be happy to have you. I'm gonna make sure Reem, um, any better now? We're gonna see. Hopefully, she's
That's
hearing.
saying that I'm hearing you fine. Oh, good.
Oh, good. Okay,
That makes
appreciate that.
I
Thank
appreciate
you so
that.
much.
Thank you, Adam.
Perfect. Well, hopefully, glad that came back.
Yeah.
Thank you all. Glad you can hear us, and we will be here next week, same time, same place, live on all the channels. Thursdays at 10 a.m. We just do a quick social media update. As you can see, we usually get into some sort of social media tangent. But any
Absolutely.
questions that you have, please come and talk to us. It'll be me and Brandon next week. And Alexis, you're always welcome back. And thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Awesome. And thanks everyone for watching. Have a great rest of your week. And don't hesitate to DM us or message us your questions or any help you need. We are always here to help with all things social media. All right. Bye, everyone. Have a good weekend.